Hi everyone, my name is Grace and welcome to this episode of Gracie, the Kenyan Diaspora and Returnee. For those of you who are listening to us for the first time, we're so glad that you've joined us. This podcast is a forum for discussing everything diaspora and life as a returnee. Today, I'm glad to host Jaki Mathaga. Jaki is with us virtually, so you will not be able to see her seated next to me. But in between the episode, we will share some of her videos and work. Hi, Jaki. How are you?
Fine, thank you, Grace. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. We've really been trying to schedule this, and I'm so glad that you've accommodated my schedule, finally.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, so let's just get started, Jaki. As we have gotten to know each other, I learned from you that you are a former diaspora. Why don't you go in and share with us your diaspora experience? Where did you go, when, what did you go for, if you don't mind sharing, and even why you returned back home?
So when we talk about diaspora, it's anything outside of the country, right? Because
Yes.
I think my first diaspora experience was just crossing the border.
Yes, it
to
is.
Tanzania for work.
Yep.
Yeah. So just crossing the border to Tanzania for work, and then making the decision then to go. Actually, that's not right. My first diaspora experience was actually for my undergrad. I started off my university education in Maseno University.
Okay.
But then when I was in campus, there were so many strikes. It seemed like every other week
Yeah.
there was a university strike going on. And so my parents made the decision to send me to South Africa to finish.
Okay.
So I went to the University of Natal in KwaZulu Natal. Right now they renamed it to the University of KwaZulu Natal, but I was in Pietermaritzburg in South Africa for quite a while. It took me about 3 years to finish my undergrad then, and then I worked for another 2 years for Macro in Joburg.
Okay.
So then I came home. Then I came back home. So that was my first sort of like returnee episode. And then I thought, foreign educated girl, you get good jobs when you come back. You have all this retail experience.
Yeah.
You're gonna get a good job at home. But then I ended up working in jobs that now I can say that experience gave me something, because there's no experience that's ever lost if you utilize it well.
True.
But then I wasn't doing what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So a friend invited me to visit her in TZ, and my older brother was living in Dar at that point. So I went across to Tanzania, stayed with my friend for a little bit, started work in Tanzania as well. I got to work a little bit for Action Aid, and then began to work for Habitat for Humanity. And I can say that was my first, my beginning in working with non-profits.
Okay.
Because from then on, it's been non-profits all the way. So I worked for Habitat for Humanity for a bit, and then realized that I couldn't delay my master's. I wanted to do my master's, and so I went over to the UK, and I was in the University of Nottingham doing a master's in public admin, and then came back in 2006 because I wanted to have my son here. Okay. I kept on seeing all these women in supermarkets with day-old babies, and I was traumatized. I was like, I cannot imagine being, like, having a baby in a foreign land without help that people seem to have at home when you have a child. So for me, that looked quite difficult, because some of those babies I was seeing in supermarkets were really very tiny, and it seemed like these moms basically had nobody else to do the shopping for them. And so, here they were in a supermarket having to push a pram and then having to push a trolley. I was like, Apana, maybe I should come home and have my baby. Maybe I should take advantage of the very beautiful maternity leave that UK companies give.
Yeah.
So that then I can come back home and have my child. But then 1 year into my maternity leave, because that's how good maternity leave can be in the UK.
Yeah.
That you can get 6 months paid and 6 months unpaid.
Wow.
So at the end of my 6 months unpaid maternity leave, I decided I didn't want to go back.
Okay.
My son and I were doing well here.
Yeah.
We had family. He was loved. I was still enjoying the care of my parents. I was still feeling like a very new parent. And so we came, we stayed, and our forays into the West and other countries have just been now for visits and back, but never to, we've not,
Ah, okay. You know, there's something you've said, and I just smiled when you were talking about coming home and expecting a certain amount of appreciation for the work that you've studied abroad. We've actually talked about that in prior episodes. I hosted Moneki, I hosted Mokami in another one, and then Sisi and Mokami. And it seems to be the common theme that when we study abroad and we come home, the income disparity, or just what we expect versus what is here, is so big. And it's something that I like to share about, even as people are planning to come home, to just set the right expectation. So I did smile about that. And then as you were talking about being in a supermarket with a baby, I hosted Dr. Wanjiro Stula. She's an orthodontist who talked about the same thing. She was in Germany, and she was saying how sometimes even as you're trying to reach for something, people are just minding their own business, and you're the one here trying to navigate. And so she also decided to come home because she realized that it would be better for her here, you know, balancing her career and then being a mom, because here we have affordable help for that. So I can relate with you just based on what others have also shared.
I think one of the things that I learned about the expectation that we have, let me put myself in that category as well, that we have when we get all this education that's abroad, is we expect that people, I don't know why, that you expect that that maybe people here haven't got the same experience, or that what you have is something that's needed. And what I discovered along the way is that what my education outside of Kenya does is that it offers me an advantage to think differently, and to be able to look at the local market to figure out what is unique about my education that I can offer here. So at present, I am doing my second master's. I should really do a PhD. I'm doing my second master's online with Fuller. I graduate in June. Excited for that experience. Woo! But then with this second one, it's kind of looking at what is unique about this American degree that I'm getting, that would be different in the context that I'm in. What does that education bring in the context that I'm in? What is different? What would make me more hireable, or more appealing as a consultant in my context than somebody who has studied locally or just has local experience? It's that unique advantage that those who are outside the country must continuously look for. Assume that everybody is as well educated as you, because Kenyans anyway love to read and they love books. So you then need to look for an edge. What's your unique selling point as a diaspora educated person?
It's true. And because we are also so global, that global perspective really helps. The way you think, the way you're just set to, even in the classroom, debate whatever presentation you have, or if you present a thesis. I have found that studying abroad, that's what it really helps. And then even presentation skills. Now when you in your job, when you start presenting to others, there's a way you've practiced so much in the diaspora that I found my undergrad education did not have. So I wish you the best in that. I know it's one of the reasons we kept looking for each other, and we're like, hey, this Jaki and her schedule.
The finish line. Yes. Just a couple more months. And commencement is in June, and I'm excited.
All right. Well, congratulations ahead of time. Now, Jaki, I know
Thank you.
You're welcome. Jaki, I know we connected because of the discussion on autism. Several months ago, I started just researching on autism because last year I had met a friend whose sisters have autism, and I wanted to understand what that's like, because you can always go to Google and see, but sometimes some things are exaggerated if you really don't have a framework, or I wanted to just study it and also just understand it from a local perspective, because my friends' sisters are here. And as I was doing my online research, you came up several times, and I purchased a book from you called Raise Him Up, which I recommend to anyone to read. It's such an easy read. I read it in 2 days, and after that I was like, now I need to talk to Jaki. Like, who is this chick? Yeah. So thank you for the journey. You've really held my hand. We've had conversations. I felt like I know you. And what I liked about the book is you were not just talking to people who have family members who have autism, but just to educate us. So Jaki, why don't you tell us your experience, how the book came about and your experience raising an autistic child?
So, oh my goodness, yeah. So for the sake of your listeners, Raise Him Up is also available on Amazon.
Yeah.
So if if anybody looked for Jaki Mathaga, Jaki Mathaga, and Raise Him Up, it's easily accessible on Amazon. So I wrote the book when my son was 14 and he just turned 17. Was it 14 or 13? But he just turned 17. Mm-hmm. And the reason I was writing is because I was going through this program where we were being challenged to write our stories. Like, what's your story really?
Yes.
What is it that you have internally as knowledge that would benefit other people? Mm. And so when I thought about like what my story with my son and what my experience, his experience really, what has been my experience of his autism, because he is the one who is autistic, I'm not. What has been my experience of his autism and what lessons have I learned along that journey? So when my son was diagnosed, he was diagnosed at 5, and hearing that somebody's getting a diagnosis at 5 is strange to newer parents, because now in Kenya, thankfully, we can have kids diagnosed at 18 months, 2 years. But by the time we were getting my son's diagnosis, he was already 5 years old. And the diagnosis came as a result of a short stint that we did in hospital, and a doctor pointed out that, asked me, did I realize first and foremost that my child wasn't hearing? And I was like, what do you mean by my son isn't hearing? So my son had been progressively losing hearing since he was probably about 18 months or 2 years, because fluid would build up in his eardrum. So he had adenoids that kept on swelling. So he had continuous repeated tonsil infections, which meant, of course, then that we were always taking dawa, the Kenyan way. You go to a hospital, the thing that the doctor gives you is an antibiotic. You go and give your child, then you get like an antihistamine. There were all sorts of things that we were taking at that point. Then my son, so we ended up getting a diagnosis at 5, and we didn't get the diagnosis because we weren't going to some of the best hospitals. My experience of hospitals in Kenya at that point is not really kind, so to speak, because we're paying a lot of Kenya shillings to be seeing pediatricians in some of the best hospitals in Kenya, but we weren't getting told what was wrong with my child. So when you have your first child, most mothers will religiously listen to the doctor, and the doctor's voice overrides the mother's voice. So because I was back here, I was living with my parents at the point, so even my mother couldn't get anything, any advice edgewise about what was wrong with my child, because the doctor said. Right. So I religiously did all our vaccines, religiously did all my clinics, even went beyond, because when most parents would probably stop at age 2, at age 3, we were still doing clinics, wellness clinics. But all this time, there's no doctor who ever told me that your child has missed milestones, right?
Oh, wow.
No, nobody ever told me that I should. In fact, what I was hearing was, "Oh, boys speak late," and so I wanted to be worried about the fact that he isn't speaking at that time. So the things that I was hearing then, nothing pointed me towards the fact that my child is autistic. Nothing at all.
Yeah.
Not from doctors, not from teachers. He had started nursery school, but the diary always came back with, he had a good day. Nowadays, I tell parents that I work with is that when a teacher writes he had a good day, you must ask, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does it mean that he had a good day or she had a good day? What does that really mean?
Yeah, because it can be different from one child to another too. It could be today just means they didn't bully. The other days they bullied, today they didn't bully. So in comparison, though, is that a good day, you know?
Yes. So the diary was always full of, he had a good day, he had a good day, he had a good day.
Yeah.
You know, so when you open your child's diary and he had a good day, he had a good day, and it's coloring homework, and you do hand over hand and you help your child color, and the book goes back and the homework is. So we were in this cycle where nothing was pointing us to something being wrong. So it took this very brief hospitalization for somebody to point me towards the fact that something might be wrong. And then when we followed the trail of that experience, getting a hearing test confirming that he had been losing hearing, that might be the reason why he wasn't speaking then, getting his adenoids removed, they put grommets in his ear to drain the fluid from his eardrums. We waited for the period that was needed, that we needed to wait for the grommets to naturally fall off, which means then that the eardrums are healed. And then I was like, okay, so Safa, you speak, because the reason why you've not been speaking is because you've not been hearing. So I'm looking at my child thinking, why are you now not speaking? Because you can hear clearly. And at that point, then I think I really took a look at my son, because now that what had been pointed out to be a possible problem was out of the way, I could begin to observe what else was going on. True. Beyond the communication struggle, what else was going on? So I started noticing things that I should have noticed before, that are usually, small, I guess, flags for autism. Like he had these incredible meltdowns, which is totally, a meltdown is different from a tantrum. A tantrum is when a child, is whatever causing or whatever, and when they get what it is that they wanted, the tantrum ends, right? But a meltdown is different, because a meltdown does not respond to getting an object or getting what it is that they were demanding by this behavior. And so I started noticing that what he had were meltdowns, like he seemed overwhelmed by the environment, by the noise. I started noticing the hand over his ears if we were in a loud place. Resistance to a change in routine, that if we were headed one side, we couldn't change and say, oh, now we're going this other direction. So I started noticing his affinity to liking certain things. I don't like using the word obsessively, but he had particular interests, and those were his interests. That was it. If he had an interest in moving objects, and that was it. I started noticing the spinning. So there were so many flags, autism flags then, that came up, but I still had no solution where to get a diagnosis. And then soon after that, because we were talking as a family and trying to figure out what does this mean, there was a visiting education psychologist from, of all the places, Swaziland, who had come to my parents' church as a missionary. And he was an education psychologist, and he was talking in church to people about the children that they see running down the aisle on a Sunday who don't seem to be able to sit down. So he was talking about education issues, learning difficulties on this particular Sunday. And because I wasn't in church that Sunday, my parents came and told me, you must go for the afternoon session. This man is talking about things that sound like our grandchild. You need to go listen. So I went and listened. that afternoon.
Yeah.
And I was intrigued enough to realize that he was speaking about kids who were like my child.
Oh.
And so on the following Monday, he was actually offering assessment. And that's the first time I actually found out that my son was autistic, because then I went with my son. We spent an hour. He did. We were in conversation for almost an hour while he observed my child doing certain activities. And so he told us, your son has PDD-NOS, and that was pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified, and it's one of the categories, or was one of the categories in the DSM-5. I don't know whether there's a DSM-6 right now, but that's the diagnostic tool. That's the whatever psychologist or like those who are in mental health sciences use to diagnose issues like autism and other disabilities. Yeah. And so I learned then that my son was on the autism spectrum. Yeah. And since I'd been given this label, I started wondering, so now what's next? Now that you've told me what it is. Yeah. What do I do about this big word? Yeah. What do I do about it? I didn't know anybody else who had a child with autism. And that's not because they were not there, but it's because back then, I don't know that we talked about autism the way we talk about it now, or disability the way we talk about it now. Yeah. Or maybe now I move in circles where disability is discussed openly, and so it's a common thing to hear disability being discussed. But back then, I didn't know any other person with a child with a disability. So I did what all parents do, which is go to the internet and consult Dr. Google, which can be such a rabbit hole. Yeah. My goodness. Yeah. I usually tell parents, before you Google, talk to another human.
Imagine. This is why I called you, Jaki. I was like, I'm not Googling. I might see things and it will just, take me all the way left. So, but I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, and you see, the thing we do when we Google symptoms, anybody who Googles any symptoms, the thing that you automatically do as a human is look for the worst case scenario. Yes. I don't know whether it's an unconscious thing that people do, but you want to know what's the worst of it. Yes. Once you begin on that scale for what's the worst of it, my goodness, it will take you. It will take you very far. Yeah. So at that point, the things then that I was reading was that children who are autistic don't accept hugs. Children who are autistic don't have never developed friendships. Children who are autistic never speak. Children who are autistic never excel in school. Children who are autistic don't have any skills. Children who are autistic will have to depend on their adult caregiver in their life for the rest of their life. So it was all doom and gloom. Yes. And that can just send you to another different direction of what's going on. Yeah. So I can see all these things, and then at that point, because I started telling my friends that my son has been diagnosed with autism, blah, 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 they would send me anything they see on the internet and anything that is in the news, which is again depressing. Yes. So because they think you need to know. Yeah. That's their way of helping, but you're right, it can cause more despair at that point. Yeah. Yes. So the reality was that my son had certain difficulties, and with those difficulties, our lives, of course, with the realization of those difficulties, our lives changed, because we needed to find out. And when I say we, I mean my entire family, because they've been really very supportive. My parents, my brothers, my sisters-in-law, they've just been very, very supportive in terms of helping with my son and helping figure out what's going on with my son. Yeah. I've had very supportive friends as well, which has been incredible. So the first, I think, place that I connected was with other parents, was actually on something that a Kenyan lady who lives in, where does she live? Where am I forgetting? It's a US state. Anyway, so I will remember. Yeah. So there was she lives in Boston. So the first thing that I connected with online was Kenya Autism Alliance, which is an online support group that's run by a lady called Cindy Goshine. She does a good job connecting parents online with each other. So that's amongst the first things that I connected with. So I connected with Cindy. We started talking about autism, etc. So then after that, my realization was that I didn't want to be online.
Yeah.
Because for me, online was connecting with people that were living, in other places, while I wanted to know what's going on a day-to-day basis. And I started when I was interacting with people and I would connect with them offline, most of them would ask questions about where do I go to get this, what do I do about this, how do I for that, my child has been thrown out of school. Because remember, all along, what we're experiencing, what I am experiencing is not foreign to what other people are experiencing as well. My son would get admitted to a school, but then the school would take our money but not teach. My son would get admitted to a different school and he would be the most popular child in that school because he would be roaming about. Every child would know him. Because he was moving from class to class but not really being taught. So the struggles I was having with education were the struggles that other parents were having, and so I started ADAT Foundation. So ADAT stands for Others Dream Autism Trust. And I started it first and foremost as a legacy vehicle for my son. Because
Jaki, say that again. Mention
to count for some.
Yeah, mention that foundation again so that in case the audience have missed it, they can catch it.
Okay, so it's ADAT Foundation and it's Arthur's Dream Autism Trust. That's the full name for the foundation. We have a website. It's adatfoundation.org. So when ADAT started, it started first as a legacy vehicle. I wanted to make sure that the experiences that my son was having and that I was having through him were not lost. And the beginning of ADAT was education advocacy. Yes. Because my trouble at that point was education. Kenya at that point didn't seem to have, basically I would say, a clue about special needs. People were advising me that if I wanted my son to be educated, I need to take him to a boarding school. But I'm like, but I don't want him to go to a boarding school at the grand old age of 7 years or 8 years. I don't want my baby in a boarding school. What do I do about education? So how do I even so a school starts demanding a shadow teacher, but when you pay for the shadow teacher ends up teaching another class. How do I advocate with the school so that the school respects the contract that I have with this extra personnel that they have demanded that I hire to assist my child? So advocacy around issues to do with education, even to the extent where at some point we would talk to heads of schools about beginning autism units. So some of at that point, because I was working elsewhere, one of my proudest, I think, projects has been the Sosiani Primary School is in Eldoret, but the organization I was working with then, we not only did a marathon that was geared towards autism advocacy twice while I was heading the foundation there, but then we also ended up with renovating a 5-class block, which ended up being used for autism. And that project itself showed me how possible it is for schools to have inclusion in their inclusion services within a public primary school in this republic. It also showed me that the Ministry of Education has resources. So the resources are, say for example, KISE is tasked with producing, that's Kenya Institute of Special Education, they're tasked with training teachers in special education. We have I'm forgetting what it's called, but they do curriculums as well. Then we have the Ministry of Education, which not only can pay for the workers that are needed to support those classrooms that have special ed learners, but then they also can redirect teachers who've been trained in Kenyan universities and are special ed teachers, but they're teaching geography and maths and history, what else. So they can be redirected to learning support center, or to, like a block of classes that's decided that a school has decided that's their inclusion unit. So the resources seem to exist, but then they're scattered.
Right. And
so the work we were doing.
And let's talk about that a little more, Jaki, because I know you are well traveled across different continents, and with your own studying, your own research, as you've raised your son, in the book you call him King, you've been able to see the gaps that are there in Kenya, the areas of improvement. So for the sake of, let's say, a diaspora who has a special needs kid, maybe autism if that's what you're familiar with, but any of it, when they want to return home, what are these things that they should be?
One of the most difficult things, of course, is that there's a mismatch between the needs of the child versus what is available in a school.
Yeah.
So what we know as special education, in a place like, say, for example, the US, it's not offered in the same way in Kenya. For example, when my son has had the opportunity to maybe do summer school in the US, because we've had occasion to actually, have that privilege to be able to visit, and for him to be able to do summer school, which has helped with his education just a bit.
Yeah.
The difference is outstanding because from the moment a child steps into a classroom, the people who are needed to offer learning support seem to be in place.
Yeah.
Like the therapist, that if he needed an occupational therapy, the therapist is there. If he needed speech, the therapist seems to be in the school premises. If he needs a consult with a behavior therapist, that person seems to be in the school environment, Whereas here in Kenya, it's totally opposite because the parents themselves are supposed to source the support that their child needs. The school in Kenya just provides basic education.
Wow.
Which we want as one teacher, many children learn. The support the child needs to succeed, the occupational therapy, the speech, all of that, it's up to the parents to provide.
And I remember in your book you were even talking about the expense involved, and I know later on we'll even talk about the scarcity of those specialists even in our country.
Yes.
Yeah.
So and that can get because and then the other difference is where you find sometimes that the services are sort of being provided in a private school setting. What happens is that that ends up being very, very expensive for the parents. We were at one point in a school where we were paying where kids were paying, I think the kids were paying 70K a month.
Wow.
My child was paying almost 280 because the school demanded that we needed to pay for an occupational therapist, we needed to pay for a speech therapist. They thought my child needed hydrotherapy, so they charged. They wanted us to pay for a shadow teacher. So it all accumulates. Everything seems to accumulate to this whatever big delivery, this big cost that had to be delivered at the end of the day. So our parents can only do so much when they when because you see the thing is, even if you have a good income, eventually you will get broke at some point. I don't know, unless people earn what, but it gets it exhausts your finances.
It does, Jaki. It does, because I was recently reading up on the average salaries in Kenya, and salaried people many salaried people are not making 280K, and even if they were, there's the rent or mortgage, there are the other kids in the house, there are other expenses, then there's savings,
So what happens usually is you start off. I usually think of like when you're thinking about the little engine that's cool. You start off and then you're like, I think I can. But at some point you really do get exhausted, because at some point what you're thinking is, I really cannot.
Right.
I can't get over the hill.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult to get over the hill.
Yeah.
Because the expenses keep on mounting. You keep on struggling to make sure that everything is paid for.
Yeah.
And then, but then it's difficult.
It is.
So yeah. Yeah.
All right. So thank you for that. So the gap that we were talking about. Now going back to your foundation, what are some of the things that you do there? How can we support you, whether we are local Kenyans or diaspora?
So there are several things that I do. So ADAT, from when we were doing education, ADAT has grown. So we grew to doing advocacy around healthcare as well.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talk about advocacy around healthcare, it's because normally sometimes when a person with a disability or even a child with a disability visits a doctor, what the doctor ends up starting to want to do is to treat the disability.
Yeah. Oh.
So when we show up at the hospital, I don't blame them. But you see, if I show up and I was looking for help with an earache, okay, maybe an earache is not a good example for autism. But you end up like having to explore the disability with a doctor rather than the tummy ache that took you there. The whatever it is that took you there. So when we do advocacy for healthcare, we really talk to medical health practitioners.
Yeah.
To ask them to not only treat the person first.
Yes.
The disability is that's one of the things that they are, but then also in hospitals, especially when it comes to autism, other disabilities, to look at the triage process when the child enters the hospital and make that as painless as possible. There's a time my child couldn't, and all this, by the way, everything that I do advocacy around is sort of kind of connected either to a story I've had or our own experience. So for healthcare, an example would be, in order, nowadays my son we can go to a doctor, we can see a doctor, he will allow that stethoscope, he will allow the, a thermometer, but there was a time you couldn't put a thermometer anywhere, like seeing a white coat would just be chaotic, cause us to run away. So advocacy around healthcare means, are you only able to treat a patient when you have your white coat on? Or can you remove your white coat? And so this child isn't scared by the things that scare them and they're able to sit with you in the must a consultation take minimal time? Or are you happy to explore with the child until they're comfortable for you to be able to touch them so you can check their throat?
Wow.
Put that into their heart. So doing just talking to different medical professionals so that they're a bit accommodating. If like the triage process, if where we're being called, where we first of all get received at in hospital is a noisy place, too many people, it means that my child might not be able to tolerate that space. So is there another space we could sit and wait? Because sometimes we can wait for our number, even if we are number 100, if we are in a separate space that is quiet, that is peaceful, that doesn't have, and a lot of times we would be taken to like whatever would be the children's room. But then I'm like, you see, my son is now no longer what you consider a baby. He's big. So is there a separate waiting room where we can sit and wait and do things, activities as we wait for the doctors? And then even going as bold as to say, can the doctor come and see us where we are within where we've been told to wait? Must we go to the doctor's consultation room? So what would make access to healthcare comfortable for children and adults with autism, or children and adults with other disabilities? What makes access comfortable? Then I started, as we went along, I started encountering justice issues as well. Where I would read in the paper that there was a child who took a sweet or something from the supermarket and walked away, and then he was mocked and beaten, and then they later found out the child couldn't talk, and it becomes a case. Or somebody who is non-speaking was arrested, was accused of a petty crime. And a petty crime in Kenya is anything that attracts a jail term of 6 months or a fine, of some amount. So, somebody with an intellectual disability is, has been arrested 1, 2, 3, and the family don't know what to do. So I started discovering that the process sometimes ends up landing some of these people in Mathare.
Really?
Yeah. And yes, because once you're before a judge, what the judge will do once they realize that there's an issue is that the judge will issue an order for you to get a diagnosis done. And with the way the justice system works in Kenya, sometimes when the police take you, say, for example, from Isiolo to Mathare to get an examination done, the police might never come back for you. And so we have like people who are in Mathare who are there because of a mental health issue. We have people who are, not a mental health issue, who are there because of an intellectual disability.
Oh, wow.
We have people who are in jail serving time because of an intellectual disability. They couldn't explain that they did not mean to trespass somebody's property. They got lost, because one of the things that persons with autism or children with autism do is sometimes they elope. They get away from whoever is their caregiver, and then they get confused about where they were going and cannot find their way back. And so if you meet this person, they are in the wrong place. They shouldn't be there. If they're an adult, they look like they intended to steal. So of course you call the police and you say so and so wanted to steal. Then the person is before a judge. They can't explain themselves. Their mother can't pay the 10,000 fine because they are very poor, and the person is in jail.
Oh my God,
so
Jaki, this is, as you've said, I almost just want to leave my mouth on the floor, because we don't talk enough about this. And I know World Autism Day is coming up, but truly, even as you've said, imagine I didn't know any of this. I didn't know that there are people experiencing this. I didn't know that even me, if I ever see someone doing something like that, that I wouldn't think they're trying to steal from me or steal from the next person. I think we need more awareness, truly. As you've spoken, I'm just thinking, how do we not know these things? And even the court system, how are they behind even just everything? Because Mathare is extreme. Mathare is so extreme to even say that's where people are going to get the treatment. I mean, to be checked out. But I guess maybe that's the only option we have. I don't know. I'm just hearing you talk, and I'm in shock.
So it's been one of the few alternatives for government. Okay, so if you're in the justice system, the court will not send you to a private institution to get a diagnosis. You can only go to a government institution, and they are the ones who've been I guess, offering mental health services, and so the diagnosis of the person, the reports back to the justice system and all of that, to the magistrates and all of that. So we've worked on a few cases as ADAT where we've worked with a lawyer to just get a few people who've been accused of petty crimes out of Mathare, and they've been there 10 years, 15 years, 8 years. You walked through the market, you were hungry, you saw somebody was roasting something, you ate.
And then 10 years, and Mathare, how...
Nobody had explained to you the concept of money, and that, in order to get an item, you have to pay for it. There are so many things that are lacking in terms of like how we educate persons with autism or intellectual disabilities or other learning disabilities in this country. And I always see that those who are much older than my age group of parents parenting children who are now in their late teens, those people had barely zero. They had sub-zero support, and the education system was even worse than it was when I started educating those who are. I usually say those who are after the age of my son have an easier time because they have a lot of people advocating and pushing for things to happen. So the other thing that and then we work then with a lawyer to make sure that the courts get the case is taken back to the court where it originated from, so that the police can then come and get this person, so that this person has their day in court, so that they can actually get the justice that they should have gotten from the very beginning. They should never have been there, because you see, when they're in Mathare, they're not there as a patient only, they're there as a patient and a prisoner, because they went there under the orders of a judge or a magistrate. So the problem now with somebody who's been separated from their parents or their communities for long is that for some people, some communities, some families, the absence of this person is a relief. And so integrating them back with their family is usually very difficult, because it means that the person has to have some advantage coming back to the family. So what is this person bringing back to the family? So we look for donors and institutions that want to work with us in terms of reintegration of persons with intellectual disabilities and other disabilities rejoining their family after they've been, behind bars, or they've been, to a mental health hospital or whatever. And so you have to work with communities, you have to work with the administration, so that person isn't the person who is accused of a crime because they came from jail last week and so-and-so's nails were stolen. They're the most likely culprits because we know they were. So we work with, you have to do a lot of disability awareness so that people are aware that this person is not a criminal. They just have a disability. So it's really working towards decriminalizing disability, working together with others to just see the repealing of petty crimes against persons with disability, specifically intellectual disability and mental health disabilities, because those are punitive, and sometimes it's, the things that might happen, like somebody not understanding they need to pay for something, is a result of their disability. Then you have, so that's some of the work we do. And then finally, one of my favorite things that we do is then, of course, offering them support to families that are like my families. So one of our biggest projects as ADAT is a group we call Through the Roof. And call it Through the Roof because of the story in the Bible where there were 4 guys who got this man, to before Jesus. They took off the tiles in the roof and got the guy before Jesus. Because that person would not have gotten the help that he needed if his friends were not together with him. So
the room was crowded.
So I started Through the Roof. Now I have wonderful admins who are also leaders in their own right. And by that I mean, if I'm the, say for example, autism expert, which I am not the only one. We have mothers who have experiences like those, but then if I'm the one who's offering autism advice, we have somebody who offers, CP advice. We have somebody who offers Down syndrome advice. We have somebody who looks at us and makes sure that we don't forget those who have rare diseases, rare genetic diseases, rare disorders that some of them we've never heard of. We look at all disabilities, physical and also, so that at least all parents who come Through the Roof find another parent that they can talk to, not only about their own child's disability, but also talk to other parents about how you really doing in this nation of Kenya. Where are you getting resources for school? Where are you going to hospital? Which occupational therapists did you hire? Can I hire them? How much do they cost? What does the law say about 1, 2, 3? So Through the Roof is a place where we connect. So we connect now through WhatsApp, because for many parents, being on WhatsApp is actually much easier than, say for example, being on Facebook, which is what I found. It's more immediate. You get a response from somebody. If, say for example, your child was having a seizure and you didn't know what to do, you say, oh my goodness, my child is having a seizure, you have 20 answers telling you do this, do that, if you have the time to read in the moment of panic. So parents, so the method that I use on Through the Roof is actually parent to parent support, because if my child is 17, I have advice for a newly diagnosed mom because her child is 2. But then there's a mom who has a 35-year-old and she has a lot to tell me about parenting my child in the next few years until he's 35. children. So we use a parent-to-parent sort of method, so that you have somebody always answering somebody else. So myself and the admins only step in when needed, when we see the conversation is going south. We want our voices to always be last, because we want to empower other parents to get to where we are in the confidence that we have parenting our children. So we do through the roof, and then the other thing that Through the Roof does is that we do advocacy with churches as well, because family or persons with disability are not in church, and they're not in church because churches don't have inclusion.
Right.
So church is usually a reflection of society. What you see going on in church is usually, you can actually tell what goes on in church really to be going on in society. So because churches don't include, society has not included. Why? Because the judge that I want to do justice, to help me with justice issues, also goes to a church, and he doesn't hear inclusion spoken about. So why should he care? The teacher who care about my child's learning process goes to a church. She doesn't hear inclusion talked about. In fact, they ignore those with disabilities. Why should she care when she's at her workplace? So we do advocacy encouraging churches to include, because I am of the opinion that the day churches actually get this together, get this inclusion thing together, begin to include, society will change, because you're motivated from your Sunday sermon or your Sunday environment to go out into the world and do likewise, right? And so we will begin to see. So we empower parents to be able to go back to their local churches to say, I need you to create space for my child in Sunday school. It's not easy, because the stigma that we see in society is also the stigma that exists in church. But we do it, slowly by slowly. So Through the Roof, we meet one Saturday a month, the first Saturday of every month. In fact, we have a meeting tomorrow, because it's one Saturday of April. And then what we will do together is we will have a worship service, and then we do activities together. And the activities vary. So sometimes it's a nutritionist talking to us, sometimes it's a lawyer telling us about how to prepare our will. The pandemic showed everybody that you can die, right? So it's preparing your will, or it's a teacher telling us, if your child is not in school, this is what you could do to teach them at school, at home. So we do the church service, but then we also have a session of learning something together. And then after that, I am a firm believer that those who come to church must not go empty-handed. So the other thing, which is a big part of what we do, is looking at families of persons with disability and figuring out what's missing in terms of resources. So whether it's resources for the kids in terms of, is it school equipment, that they need for their special needs learners, or is it food in the house? Because sometimes if, say for example, it's a single mom of a child with a disability, and that child is severely disabled, then that means that mom hardly ever gets time to go out and look for work so that she can feed her family. So she most likely, her family is hungry, have a lot more times than others. So what we do is every time we have Through the Roof, I usually like to have also food that I can give away. I don't take it for granted that those who come to the meetings left food in their houses, and if they came and they learned something but they go home with food, that's a good thing. The other biggest thing that my community has is, of course, meds, because some of the things that happen around with children with disability is that they can have comorbidity with epilepsy and seizures. So, and those meds can get really expensive for some of these parents. So again, it's to be that resource that says how much is it at a pharmacy, and to have cash to be able to pay for somebody's 1 month prescription, so that they can use then the money they would have used for medicine to buy food. Because the balancing that most parents of kids with disability usually do is, are we going to have food in this house, or are we going to pay for the needs of this child with a disability? and being able to provide relief when we can, so that the mother can say, "Sawa, our meds were taken care of, or our foods were taken care of. We can now put the money towards meds," or even things like there are so many children who have severe disabilities and are still using diapers. Diapers are very, very expensive.
They are. Yeah.
And when that child has been using diapers from when they were born, now they become a teenager, and so they've transitioned to adult diapers. Those things get very, very expensive.
Yeah.
So it's like trying to find those resources for parents, and we usually use the exempting through the roof to distribute it. So I know I've talked a lot, but that's what we do.
No, you know, it's so good, and I do have a follow-up. So just for those who may have missed it, that's ADAT Foundation, A as in Andrew, D as in David, A as in Andrew, T for Thomas, and Foundation, so ADAT Foundation. Jaki, if we wanted to contribute financially to the work you're doing, how can we donate to your foundation?
So we the organization depends largely on individual donors, but we also the organization depends on individual donors, but then also when we have projects around access to justice or access to healthcare, we those then can come as direct funding from partners that we're working with. So I guess the involvement for Diaspora would be if your organization works around healthcare, justice issues, education issues. We'd love to partner. We'd love to be, the Kenyan organization that's helping you achieve your goals or whatever.
Yes.
When you're still out there in the diaspora.
Yeah.
And then, but for individuals, we have a need every single month to supply food, to supply meds, to hire the hall that we are in, to pay for the chairs that they sit in, to pay for tea, because we offer them a cup of tea when they come in. And donations are easy. If you're in Kenya, the pay bill is 554-871, and the account number will be what you're donating towards. So if your heart is to give towards meds and you tell us it's for meds, we'll make sure that somebody who is desperate for medicine needs that. If it's food that you want to contribute towards food, then the account number you use is food. But if you're outside, PayPal works for us, and our PayPal address is simple. It's just info@adatfoundation.org.
All right.
That's our PayPal. Yeah.
So info@adat.org, and the pay bill was 554.
So it would be info@ADAT Foundation.
Sorry.
.org.
Yes, yeah. info@adatfoundation.org, and the pay bill one more time.
It's 554-871.
All right.
And it should say ADAT Foundation when you use that.
All right.
So we have those two methods of bringing. If somebody wants to give it in a different way, they can give. So let me also say this, because we don't only take money from people.
Yes.
One of the things that we've benefited from in the past is we've had people who have skills. Say, for example, you're a learning support teacher in the US or in the UK or some other country outside of Kenya, or you are a medical doctor, or you are whatever your profession is that you think can contribute towards disability. So we use the Through the Roof space to call together parents for training. Some of the things that we've benefited from is persons who are diaspora, people coming for holiday. It's summer, you're coming to Kenya, or it's winter, you're coming to Kenya and you're thinking, I don't want to spend my whole holiday just eating nyama choma and going to Mombasa.
Right.
I want to do something that is useful for community.
Yes.
If we start the discussion, we start talking early in advance, it means then that we can agree what's your area of expertise that would benefit the parents that that we serve, the communities that we serve. Whether that's, if you work in an accounting firm and you think that you are very good at budgeting and you could teach us how to do our budgets to get better, or how to start a business, whatever it is that you think you could that you think your expertise is, we've benefited from those who are coming on holiday, and they've discussed with us in advance. We put together groups of people to train, because any information is good information. Yeah. And the reason why this is important is because for somebody who is thinking at some point that they might come back, it's good to test your knowledge against the local environment.
Yes.
Because it begins to teach people how to adapt into this context.
Yes.
There's a lot that's missing in Kenya. For example, I think we recently, I think there are, I don't know, I might be wrong, but we probably have a total of maybe about 4 or 5 BCBAs, board certified behavior analysts. Are you a BCBA? Are you in the US? Why are you in the US or in the UK? Why are you working here? We have so many kids who need
Jaki, let's talk about that in detail. And I know we're wrapping up, and this is one thing I actually wanted to ask is, we have people in the diaspora who have studied for this type of thing, and there's a shortage here, and we would want them to come home, and if they're even wondering, can this work at home? Because truly growing up, we were not exposed to persons with special needs. So someone might be wondering if that experience there is relevant here. So can we please talk about that in more detail? Who do we need? I know as you and I were talking, we were even talking about, where do they go after school? That after school going age. Yes. So let's talk about that as we wrap up, please.
So we have, so let me give you a good example. We have, for example, a total of 3 developmental pediatricians. And developmental pediatricians are who we should be going to for diagnosis. So what has happened is that children end up getting diagnoses from your MD, or your, just a pediatrician. Not because these people cannot, because they've gone to medical school for so long, cannot tell you that something is wrong. But a developmental pediatrician is who you should be going to see, so that they can give you the developmental diagnosis for your child, to tell you your child is this is the disability or whatever it is. So we have a total of 3, and all of them are diaspora returning.
Wow. 3 in the whole country, Jaki.
And they are located in Nairobi. If you have 3 doctors who are in Nairobi, what happens to people who need a diagnosis in Nakuru or Kisumu or Nyeri or Isiolo? What happens?
And ongoing treatment.
Diagnosed, but the accuracy of that diagnosis or the help that you get after the diagnosis is, for me,
yes.
Because that's when we end up hearing strange stories about what the doctor said.
Right.
Was wrong with the child.
Yeah.
So we need people who we need. Actually, if you think about, if you're a person who works in diaspora with persons with disability in any field at all, you need to just realize that field could be replicated here with a little bit of work. We need it. We don't have transition services. My son is now 17. Last year, his school told him not to go back. So at the age of 16, my son became a school dropout, and I have nowhere to take him after that. So what happens to us? So we're trying to figure out what's the next stage. What happens? If we were out of Kenya, we would have an automatic place that he could transition to.
Yes.
We don't have those transition places here. You end up being told, take him to a sheltered workshop, or he needs to go and do beading. But I always ask, if my son goes to a beading workshop to learn beading, nothing wrong with that. Let him do it. But however, is he going to compete with Maasai Market women to sell his beadwork?
And what if that's not his interest, Jaki? Jaki, what if it's not his interest? Also, what if it's not his interest?
That's exactly it. So we've been very narrow-minded in Kenya regarding the work that persons with disability could do. The only way people will stop being narrow-minded is if the expertise that's outside the country comes here.
Yes.
And because we've been to places with my son outside of Kenya where the person who met us at reception was an autistic person. Competently working at the reception of an organization, answering phones and directing visitors where they should go. We know that there are countries that are utilizing the minds of autistic people because they can be very task oriented and sometimes they have hyper focus, and maybe a company needs people who are like that. We have autistic people who are very IT inclined and they love everything to do with IT. Why can't they be directed to that? But because these industries are lacking, because the experts who would come and say, oh, hey, I want to start a company and I want to make sure that part of my company does inclusion, and we're going to have accommodations for persons with disability. Those don't exist. The only way they begin to exist is if those who have experienced such a kind of environment come back and create those places.
Yes.
What does it look like to establish a school in Kenya where all the services are focused on the child's success? Meaning that if you do admit a child in the school who is autistic, that you have the learning support that they need, that you have all the experts that this child needs so that they are able to progress. You've seen it working in the West. Why can it not work here? What does it mean if you say, oh, I'm just going to focus on come to Kenya, and because I've worked in residential homes and I know what it means to take care of persons with disability, I'm going to come and offer respite services or holiday services, a hotel, a holiday, whatever that includes respite. Parents of kids with disability barely go to holidays. Why? Because hotels in Kenya don't offer services that include care of persons with disability. Wow. So if I go on holiday with my son, the expectation is that me, who is supposed to be on holiday, I'm still the one who is 100% in charge of taking care of him. What rest is there? Till we rest at home, because when we go together, it's still the same.
Wow.
So what if you came and you started a hotel that included respite? There's so many families of persons with disability who would probably take advantage of that, because you've shown them that they can come and rest, and as they rest, their person with disability is right alongside them. They're having a holiday as well, but doing activities that they can manage.
Wow.
When they're in the pool, nobody's watching. There are so many. If you're in a job that accommodates persons with disability in the diaspora, that context can be translated in Kenya and you will probably earn money, but you just have to take time to explore and figure out, how do I use it? How do I use my knowledge to make a difference in this country?
Wow, Jaki. Yani, I'm almost here about to start all those businesses you've mentioned. Go to school, study, I don't know, but there's so many opportunities, and the conversation here to the diaspora is, if you're in the diaspora and you want to stay in the diaspora, you can still connect with Jaki to see how you can support people with disability at home. If you're planning to return, you see there's an opportunity here for you to support and remain in your career. Jaki, I feel the way I felt when I read your book. And for those who missed it in the beginning, it's called Raise Him Up. I read your book and I was just wowed. And right now I feel wowed again. You are a blessing. You're a blessing to those people who are coming behind you, who have nowhere to go, because your book is so easy to read, but it's also informative. And you even tell us as your neighbors how to support you, how not to just observe, how to come and tell you, how to even reduce the stigma. And as we go into World Autism Day on April 2nd, just what we need to know and how we can live harmoniously with you and your son. So Jaki, it's a pleasure hosting you. Thank you for taking the time to do this with me. And to our listeners, thank you so much for listening. Have a great day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Thanks, Jaki. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.